What's up guys, Kevin Rogers with On Point Pro Styles, window tinting in Gainesville, Georgia. I wanted to make a video. I've had some people reach out to me and ask me about how I do decals on my downtime or to fill in some spaces when I have availability, especially in the season which we're in, is the winter season, the down season. In this case, I have a Workhorse 2 plotter, and it doubles as a second revenue stream, making simple graphics and designs. I don't get into anything too intricate, but I do things for customers that might want a banner on their windshield or something on the side of their car, or even a company that wants their information on the side of their trucks. So talk about the vinyl real quick. I like to use Oracle 651 brand vinyl. It's the outdoor vinyl, 7-year life. I like to use it in a 24-inch roll. Makes quoting the job easy because it's obviously 2 square foot per 1 foot of vinyl. If they don't have it in the 24, I'll grab the 15. And in that case, you know, the dimensions change, but I'll usually just add this as 1 square foot per 1 foot that I pull and not really worry about the other 3. This stuff's pretty cheap, so don't really have to worry about it. So as far as masking it to transfer it, I use a paper masking transfer tape, also in the 24-inch roll. I like to do sometimes a dry application is harder to do on a longer decal. So this allows it being the paper, it allows for the wet application, which we'll get into. So once we get to that part, I'll show you what that's all about. But I'm gonna grab a simple logo, the Hi-Tech logo, which I use, Hi-Tech Films. And we're going to put it in the software. I'll show you the software we use, how I vectorize it, get it ready to cut. We'll load the vinyl and we'll cut out a sticker. All right, we're gonna open up Vinyl Masters. I got this from plotterdepot.com. So we're gonna actually do a Hi-Tech logo. I'm gonna just do a new document, and I'm gonna go to images here. We're gonna import an image. I've already downloaded the logo. So place it here, and we're gonna keep it small. This isn't a very high-res image, so when we vectorize it, we wanna try to make it small so that it doesn't really introduce any additional, for example, if I was to make this big, it's a little bit blurry on the edges, so it's hard for it to outline that, and it can come out kind of rough. So we keep the logo kind of small, so it keeps the edges a little bit more crispy. And I'm gonna click this T button up here at the top. Image is detected. Do you wanna include their auto trace contours? Now, I'll go ahead and say right now, I'm not a sign shop. I don't know a whole bunch about things, but I've played enough that I've gotten a lot of jobs done, and I'm a little bit dangerous with it. So I click yes, and then you can see it kind of goes through the vectorization in the background. And then I click view mode, because you can see here there's nothing that's been outlined yet. So this defaults to smooth. I don't know if I set it up that way when I got the software or not. Either way, this is the corners. So I want the corners to be sharp. And now you can see that it's put the logo in there as an outline, basically vectorizing it. So I'm gonna zoom in just a little bit and check out the edges and the sharpness and crispness of that logo. And it looks like everything's nice and square. And this happened earlier, so I already anticipated the K was going to be a little off. So that's just basically because of the image not being very high res, but I'll show you some tricks that you can use to clean up the image. So this is done. I'm going to accept that, and now I'll move that out of the way. The black one now is your vectorized image. We no longer need this one, so we'll delete that. I'm going to move this up, make it bigger. This is a 15 by 15 canvas that I've got here, so I know if I stretch this from side to side that it will be a 15-inch or right close to 15 inches in width. So you can see right now everything's grouped together. If I wanted to work on this K, which I wouldn't print it this way, you'd want to ungroup this so that you can just work on the K. So we're going to break it apart, right-click curve editing, break apart, and then I can just select the K, and I'm going to zoom way in on the K, where you can see this not cute roundness here. I'm going to click this button, which is a path editing button. I'm not going to go through all of this, but you can see it adds dots, because even I'm still sort of really rusty at this. But you move the dots around in essence, and sort of sharpen your image like that. So you can zoom way in on it and really critique it. That looks good. And then if I was to work on it on this side, I would select the path tool, and we would again do the same thing. Now this one needs more nodules, I guess you would call them.
added in order to sort of work this out. This took a lot for me to kind of figure out. I'm not going to go through the mess. You'll just have to play with it, kind of learn it. But once you get done editing just the K, you want to group it back together so that as you move it around, it moves all as one piece. But I'm going to delete that one and load the one I've already got. We're going to file, open the vector. So I've already cleaned up the K. You can see here I've already sharpened the edge, sharpened to this edge. So right now I've got it stretched basically to 15 inches. I'm going to push the envelope and get it to edge. So that's at 14.961 inches wide and almost 4 inches tall. So that's about what I want. I'm going to come up here to the cut button, and you can see that you have a couple of options here. The media width is automatic. You can change it if you kind of want to get a better bird's eye, but I just leave it. And then just remember, wherever your logo is doesn't matter, because you have to set the origin on the machine, and we'll talk about that in a minute when we load the film. So it's only going to cut where you set your cutter head up. So separate by color. If this was, let's say I was putting a white background, or I had let's say a black stroke around the outside of these letters, that would be two color. You'd have the red letters, and then I would change them to red, and then you'd have a black stroke or another color around it, and that would give you black and red. As you choose the black, it'll only give you the cutout for the black portion, which would be the stroke or the outline. And if you clicked red, it would only be the letters. So that's more of an advanced video. We'll talk about two color and stacking and all that in another video. So here we've got the high-tech auto. I have it where it's, I don't want to mirror it. So I'm going to uncheck that. Advanced after plot, obviously I don't want it to go back to the start. And then you've got these sections here, which is registration marks would add marks for you to be able to stack two colors. More on that at another date. Auto speed weed anyway. If I uncheck that, you can see that the lines in the middle go away. What this does is it puts a cut right down the center so that you can weed out the bottom, the extra portion on the bottom, and weed out the extra portion on the top without risking having to pull it all off at once and maybe ripping off a letter or something. So that weed feature makes it really nice. So that's how I keep it. So once you're ready, you can actually area test, which after you load your material into the machine, you can find out, is it going to be within the parameters? So you can see this is 748 inches wide with the boundary box and weeding box, which would be bigger than a 15-inch roll. So in the event you weren't really sure if that was going to fit, load your material and then put your cutter head at its origin state or its beginning cut state and click the area test, and it will literally point to its start point, back point, and width point to identify if it's going to run off the material or not, if you're going to be within the material. When you're ready to cut, you click cut now. Loads the cutting box. Obviously, it's going to take whatever parameters you set in the other box. It's going to bring it over here and it's going to say, are you ready to cut? So obviously we're not. We're going to start up another video, and I'm going to show you how we load the material, line it up, set the cutter head up, and then we'll click print and we'll show you how it prints.
All right, guys, so I'm going to load up the red. That's what I want to use for this logo. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get rid of these so we have some room to work on our table here. So I'm going to load my red up. This is a 24-inch wide roll. We already know we're doing a 15-inch logo, so it's going to be perfectly fine. Now, I'll show you guys kind of something that I do. This stuff is really curly, so I like to actually roll it backwards on the bottom roller to just sort of break some of that forward curl up, because it makes it a little easier to put them in the machine when it's not quite as curly. Another thing is I'm going to move my static string up so that it doesn't tug on the material as I'm cutting it, but I still want to use the static string. So as you get toward the end of the roll, these aren't taped to the roll. The roll will just fall off your rollers, and then your vinyl will just run in and out. It's perfectly fine. Or you could even pre-cut a piece of vinyl. So unlike tint, you can't really tug on the roll in the back to center it up. You're kind of reliant on your ruler front and back. So I'm just gonna pick a line here. I'm gonna line it up at the 3 1/4 front and back. 3 1/4. Now it's a small logo, so I'm not worried about it being perfect, because if it tracks just a little bit, it's not gonna hurt anything. So that's pretty close. I'm gonna lock my rollers down. So let's talk about the blade real quick. Vinyl should be cut with a 45, should be. That's the recommended blade, the 45-degree blade. My machine, I switched over to, I still use a 30 degree for my tint, but I switched over to the Clean Cut brand. And not only has this been a phenomenal blade and lasts a long, long time, turns out at the same pressure and with the same blade, I can throw some vinyl in and cut it at the same settings as my tint and not have to change the blade. So couldn't really do that with the other style blades. So Clean Cut brand, I highly recommend. So drop my blade in there, keep my settings the same. Now we're gonna set the origin of the machine. That means where I want it to start. Where it is on the computer, or how we had it on the computer looked here, but if I was to wanna, say, cut it farther to the left, I would move my cutter head there, hit enter, and now that's where it's gonna cut. So this is gonna matter more than what's on your computer screen. So I'm gonna start it kind of a little off the side here. Always remember, make sure it's in front of a roller or inside the rollers, never on the edge or the outside edge of the roller. So we're gonna set this up to cut here. And I know it's only 15 inches, so we've got plenty of bleed space. So I'm gonna hit enter, we're set, that's our origin. I'm gonna click cut on the computer and get this to start cutting so we can check it out. All right, so that's finished. It doesn't advance out past your cut, so you wanna be careful of that. So my cut edge is here. So I'm gonna advance this out just past where my cut is, which my cut is here, and this is my cutting edge. So we're gonna leave it there, get my knife, and cut this off the machine. All right, so the next thing we need to do is weed out the additional extra film that we don't need. I'm not gonna lie, without the proper lighting, this is actually pretty difficult. So I use my tinting knife and I'll find the edge. That's that boundary box that it cut. So I usually pull that away and then I'll pull all this excess away. All right. And then remember, I put that helper, that weeding line in the middle. So now I can this will peel the bottom away. I just like to go slow and watch it, make sure it doesn't pull additional material off that I don't want it to pull off. Sometimes it'll hang up on the corner of a letter or something, so you want to be careful of that. There's the case. So there's our finalized logo. So the next thing we need to do is mask this so it's ready for transfer. I'm gonna grab my masking paper and I'll just unroll it. And I'll take my decal and just make sure that the decal, the most important part, is what is on your masking. Use my hand to smooth it down. Grab me a Bondo card so that we can lock it into place. Really get it to smash down on the letters. Cut that off our roll, and then we'll flip it over, and we'll do another really firm pat on that, and then we'll cut off all the extra. So I'm gonna cut this one, we're gonna cut it down the side. There's no rhyme or reason to cutting other than, you wanna keep a little bit extra so you got room to put some tape or however you install it. So that's all done. Give it one last good squeegee and we're ready to install. So the next portion, I'm gonna stick this on my Corvette. I think it'll look really good for one, and two, I can show you how to dry apply and wet apply. So let's get situated by the vet and we'll get started. All right, so we're at my Corvette here. Highly recommend using some maybe watered down isopropyl alcohol or something to clean. This is actually my wet application solution, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail when we wet apply, but right now we're just gonna do a dry apply. So a couple of different ways that you can get this decal onto the car. Obviously, I'm not gonna talk much about measuring and centering and all that stuff. One quick way I will tell you is a lot of times I'll take a decal. If I need to find center, for example, I want it to be center with the wheel, I'll fold it over to where it starts, and then I'll just pinch the center point, and then by eye, I can quickly identify that that's about the center of my wheel. So we're gonna put it on right there, and we're gonna use the hinge method, which is primarily the only method I ever use. Now you could use, now this decal is kind of short, so you probably wouldn't want to hinge it on the top. You could hinge it on the side, which means you would take a piece of tape and tape it to the car on one side, peel it back, pull the backing and lay it down, or you can do a center hinge, which I like to do the most. So we're gonna take a piece of tape, long enough to cover the whole decal from top to bottom. I want to get at least the E and the K to stick first, so we'll kind of get it centered up roughly. Tape it to the top here, tape it to the bottom here, and that's what's called a center hinge. So I'm going to peel be careful because sometimes the letters, for example, right there, don't want to come off. This is a low tack paper masking, so I don't want it to stick to the letters too much. So I'm just going to kind of stick it back, take my knife, and this part you want to obviously be very, very careful. You don't want to cut a customer's car. You're going to cut this extra away. We got our Bondo card, so we're going to take it and start on the tape. And I'm actually just going to use the Bondo card to lay it down with the Bondo card all the way to the end. Press it up and down. Careful with the paint. If you come off the decal onto the paint with your Bondo card, you could leave little micro scratches in the paint, so careful with that. So we've got it locked on one side. We're gonna remove the hinge tape, peel up our other side, get the rest of our backing off. Careful not to let the decal prematurely hit the car. And then we're gonna do the same thing and go back this way with it. And carefully peel away our transfer tape, and just like that, my car looks that much cooler. We're gonna go to the other side and I'm gonna show you the wet application. The wet application, again, would be something longer or much larger decal. And it also allows you to kind of center it. If you were doing two colors and you didn't want to stack them previously, you do the first base color, do a wet app on the second, and it allows you to adjust it. So let's get to the other side of the car and I'll show you what the wet app looks like. Okay, so I've already pre-cleaned this as, again, isopropyl water, and I'm gonna do a wet app on this side. I've already checked the other side. I'm a 1/4 inch bigger than 2 fingers up with my decal, which is about right there. I've got my center point locked in. So I'm gonna hold that here. I'm gonna tape it there temporarily. And this time I'm gonna full peel the decal. So I'm gonna hinge it only on one side. So I like it. I'm gonna hinge it on this side, right here. So now I'm gonna peel the backing completely away. I think this is just a little bit more organized because now the car can help me hold the decal and it doesn't flop around or fold over on itself. Another thing to keep in mind is kind of keep your fingers away from the decals. You don't wanna leave your greasy fingerprints underneath the decal. So I'm gonna spray the area I'm gonna put it down on, spray the decal a little bit. And here's what's nice about this. So I'm gonna lay it down. There's no chance of air bubbles because it's wet, and in the event that I don't really like its positioning, I can simply pick up on it and slide it around until I like where it's at. So looks about the same as the other side. So now that I'm happy with its placement, we're gonna really hammer down on it because it is wet. So hammer down on it. And you don't really have to remove this, but I'm gonna pull it off anyway, if I can. So I can go all the way to the side here. So this takes a little bit longer because you gotta push the moisture out. And then the trick to a wet application, if I start peeling this right now, it's gonna start peeling the letters back off the car. But what makes the paper great for this is because you wet the outside and you soak the paper in your application solution, and that helps debond the paper from the decal. So you get the paper nice and wet, you can see it wrinkling up because it's actually absorbing the moisture. And I just like to rub it into the paper, and you see the more it sits and soaks in, the more moisture the paper's taking on, which is good. Give it one final squish. I believe that was enough time. Usually take a few seconds or so. And now you can see the paper being wet, it almost falls right off. The more it soaks, the more it falls off. So that's the wet application. So now there's no chance of air bubbles underneath it, which the dry app you can get. So that's the wet application, that's the dry application. I use them both, just depending. If you have any questions, I know this was very basic, but I wanted to show you guys another quick, easy, kind of a no-brainer way, not being a expert at it, but like I said, enough to be dangerous. If this was a customer right here, I just made me 40, 50 bucks real quick. in less than probably a 30-minute span, start to finish. Probably much shorter than the 30-minute span. So just well, colder months are coming, slow times are hitting. So hopefully this helps somebody be able to add a little bit to their schedule, a little extra money in the bank, fill up some time. If you have any questions, reach out to me, Kevin Rogers. I'm on all the socials. All of my window tint supplies and tools come from, or I'm sorry, film, comes from High Tech Films. If you don't know, check them out. The plotter that we used here was the Workhorse 2. I've had it for years. Great performing, well-priced plotters. Check them out, plotterdepot.com, as well as the software. And for all the tint tools you'll need if you're just looking to make a quick buy, more of a DIY sort of stuff, check out tintdepot.com. So that's it for this one. See you on the next one.